boys and girls. It's Mrs. Servos here. I am missing you so much. I miss seeing your smiling faces, and I miss being at school together having fun. But today I'm bringing to you one of my very favorite stories. In fact, it is what we call a fiction story. Fiction. Can you say that? Fiction. What could that word mean? Fiction. Well, you may have heard that word in the library up at school. One side of the library is called the fiction section of the library. The other side of the library is called the non-fiction section. So, maybe you've heard Mrs. Smith use that word before. Fiction. What letter does that start with? That's right, it starts with F. F is for fiction. Fiction. It also sounds like the word fairy tale. Fairy tale starts with F too. Fairy tale. Ooh, that's like the Little Mermaid. That's a fairy tale. Or it's also like, maybe Jack and the Beanstalk. That's a fairy tale. Or Little Red Riding Hood. That's a fairy tale. Fairy tale. Fiction. Well, that sounds the same. I also think that a fiction story can also be for the word fake. Fake. That starts with F too. Fiction stories are all usually made up stories that are fake or not real. They like to have lots of magic in them. They maybe have a story that has maybe a fantasy type of magical land as the setting of the story. It might have a silly character that's a monster or something that's made up in our minds. It lets us use our imagination. I love reading books that use my imagination. That way I can paint a picture in my mind while I'm reading it. So a fiction story tale or a fiction fairy tale can be fake, made up, it's not real. The author really wanted to entertain you when he told you, when he wanted to write a fiction story. So that was his purpose. He really wanted to entertain you. So today I'm going to entertain you with a story called The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms. The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms. And the fiction author is Julia Rawlinson. Now, she is a narrative writer and she writes narrative books. She wants to entertain you. So this book in the library would be in the fiction section. You're going to see some things in this book that are kind of magical or maybe not real. You might see some animals that can talk. Can animals talk? Not in real life. They cannot talk. But that's what makes a fiction story very entertaining. In this book, I want you to pay attention to who the characters are. Who are the characters in this story? Characters. Because a fiction story has three main parts. It has the characters, the setting, and the plot. I have a song that I like to use to remember those three parts. It goes like this. Character, setting, and plot. Character, setting, and plot. The parts of a fiction story. Character, setting, and plot. So those are that's the song I can sing to help us remember the three parts of a fiction story. Characters, the setting, and the plot. Now the characters are the people in the story. The setting is the place where the story takes place. So is it in a school? Is it in a kitchen? Is the story happening in a swimming pool? Where is the story happening? That's the setting. And then the plot is the problem in the story. So I want you to listen for what the problem might be. The problem or the plot in this story. It's a very cool problem. So it's called The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms by Julia Rawlinson. Listen carefully for the characters, the setting, and the plot. The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms. How beautiful. I'm going to move a little bit closer so you can see. The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms. Look at the beautiful illustrations in this book. The illustrator Tiffany Burke did a great job. The woods were full of chirping, bustling, sing-songy sounds of spring. Fletcher bounced along with his nose in the air, sniffing the just burst buds of flowers and playing chase with the butterflies, with his head spinning with sights and sounds. He tumbled happily down the hill into the sunny orchard, but when he picked himself up from the ground, he could not believe his eyes. A soft breeze danced through the branches, carrying snowflakes. Oh, snow so late in spring? Thought Fletcher. It will be too cold for the buds and the butterflies. There's no time to lose. He sees snowflakes. I think maybe you can see where the setting of this story is happening. What do you think? Where's the place this story is happening? Looking for someone to tell, he trotted back up the hill and passed a pair of birds cuckooing on a branch. You've flown to your summer home too soon, cried Fletcher. I've been down to the orchard and there's more snow on the way. Then we should fly south, they called. But first we must tell Porcupine. He just came out of his bed of leaves. He needs to snuggle back down or he'll freeze. So they're telling Porcupine to stay in hibernation. And the birds need to go back south, where they migrated from. Fletcher thinks snow is coming. Fletcher and the birds found Porcupine stretching and scratching. There's snow on the way, panted Fletcher. I saw it in the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south, and you must hide away. Then I should crawl back into my bed, stuffed Porcupine sadly. But first, we must tell Squirrel, and he needs to hunt for food. He's eaten his winter store of nuts. He will need to find some more. Fletcher, the birds, and Porcupine found Squirrel scampering after the sunbeams. Snow is blowing in from the orchard, gasped Fletcher. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed, and we must find some food. You're right. I've eaten my spring feast, said Squirrel. And all my stores are gone. But before I hunt for more, we need to tell the rabbits to munch as much grass as they can before snow falls. Those beautiful pictures. They're getting worried now. The snow's on its way. The rabbits were rolling down the hill next to their burrow. Stop playing, cried Fletcher. There's snow blowing in from the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies, and the birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed. Squirrel needs to find food, and you must munch more grass. Before we eat, said the rabbits, staggering dizzily to their feet. So the rabbits are being warned too. Fletcher's telling all of his friends what to do because the snow is coming. Let's go play in the snow. So the rabbits hip-hoppity, roly-poly plopped down the hill through the woods. There they were chased by Squirrel, Porcupine, and birds, and a bouncy, full of importance fox, all the way to the orchard, where the ground was white with blossoms. Oh my word. wasn't snow, it was a blossom. Blossoms bobbing in the branches, blossoms blowing in the breeze, blossoms blanketing the ground, and not a snowflake to be found. Those were blossoms, not snow, you foolish fox, the animals cried. Fletcher blinked and rubbed his eyes, feeling very silly, but then the animals scooped up pawfuls and clawfuls of blossoms from the ground and covered him in a tickly shower of fluttering white petals. Fletcher and his friends ran and played between the trees until at last they all collapsed in a blossomy, soft white heap. Oh, look how cute they are. Then the birds fluttered back to the branch with beakfuls of blossoms to line their nests. Porcupine stuffed off up the slope with quills dotted with tiny white petals. Squirrel went chasing up and down the trees after snow white petals danced in the breeze. And the rabbits bounced back up the hill with blossoms to brighten their burrow. But Fletcher just lay smiling in the soft bed of petals, watching the blossoms' branches bobbling overhead. I love that picture. The end. So, as you can see, that's a really lovely story about springtime. Right now it's springtime. We just turned over from winter to spring. And in the spring, we might see some of the things that were in this book. What kinds of things do we see in spring? We see butterflies, we see flowers, we see the grass start to turn a really bright, pretty green. So today what I want to do is I want us to really think about the characters, the setting, and the plot of this story. So that's exactly what we'll do. Who was the character in that story? Who do you think it was? If you said Fletcher, you were right. Fletcher is the fox in the story. I would call him the main character. And he has some big brown ears, so I'm going to draw those up right here. And he has a big long nose with some little black at the bottom there. He has 2 black eyes. And his name is Fletcher. Okay? Fletcher. I'm going to draw his name right here. Fletcher. Uppercase F for his name. Fletcher is the main character in that story. Were there some other characters in that story? Sure. There were the bunnies, there were the porcupine, there were the butterflies and the birds. There were lots of other characters in that story. Oh, the squirrel too. So, that tells us the characters. How about the setting of the story? Now, I'm going to ask you to draw a picture of the setting just like me. So, I have this white piece of paper here for you, and I'm going to draw the setting of this story. And the setting for me looks a lot like this beautiful picture of the forest. Okay? So, I'm going to draw trees first. Draw some trees first. So I'm going to draw my brown crayon just going up, up, up in a straight motion. And then some branches coming out like this. Then I'll draw another branch, another tree coming down. Can you see that? Okay, there's another tree. And then I'll draw another one because it's a forest. The setting of this story is a forest. So I'm going to be drawing something that looks like a bunch of trees. And they all had beautiful blossoms on it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw some blossoms. Blossoms are pink and they can be white. And I'm drawing these big circles all over the tree that look like blossoms. And then that will look like my setting. big blobs of color because those beautiful cherry blossoms were falling all over the place. It looked like snow. See how I'm drawing big, big circles? They're not perfect circles, but they're big enough to look like blossoms. Okay, there's the pink ones. Then I'm going to draw some purple ones because there were some purple blossoms on the tree too. You could use crayon, you could use paint, you could use, you could even use, what else? You could use markers. You can use any art supplies that you have around your house. I love drawing the setting of this book because it's just so beautiful. And you know what? There was lots of blossoms falling from the sky, so you might want to put some blossoms falling all over, even on the ground. I'm just drawing quick circles everywhere. Oh, and the grass in that book was a beautiful shade of spring green, so I'm going to use some spring green here. I'm just drawing little lines behind the bottom of my tree here. Those are green grass. Okay. Coloring it in real good. Now you can add your own details to this picture because this is the beautiful setting of the story in a beautiful forest with cherry blossoms all over. You can add as many details as possible. You can put the blue sky in because it was a beautiful spring day. In the background here. And you can even draw the characters in your story. In your picture, I mean. You can put the characters in. And then you'll have all the parts. Okay. I'm going to show you what my setting looks like there. There you go. There's the setting of this story, Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms. Okay? That gives me an idea of where the story was happening. It was happening in a forest. So I'm going to add that to my organizer up here, too. It was happening in a forest. So I'll use blue here to say forest. Fletcher was in the forest. And then the last word up here is plot. The plot is the problem of the story. What do you think the problem was? I think the problem is that Fletcher was being tricked. He thought that snow was coming, but really it was the blossoms falling from the sky. It really wasn't snow at all. So the plot of my story is Fletcher thought snow was falling, but it was blossoms. Fletcher thought snow was falling. I'm going to switch colors here because this one's dying on me. Fletcher thought snow was coming, but it was really blossoms. All right, so that tells us about the fiction story that I just read, The Fox and the Springtime Blossoms. Character setting and plot, character setting and plot, the parts of a fiction story, character setting and plot. Thanks for watching.